Just based on the cover, I assume this would be a lighthearted book where the kids are hiding something upstairs, and after a lot of silly investigation, Claudia learns that it's a puppy. But no, turns out this is another racism book. I'd rather have the puppy.
Argo Font Book Review, Argo Font Book Review.
This book was written by Anne Martin. We start with Jackie Radowski and his brothers saying they want to perform on stage. A normal babysitter would say, "Hey kids, do a special performance for me." The Perkins girls put on shows for their babysitters all the time, after all. But Claudia goes way overboard, and she decides the Babysitters Club is going to start a neighborhood band starring all of the kids. Please note, none of the babysitters can play an instrument. This is going to be painful. Marianne babysits for new clients called Lowells. The mother asks several questions about Marianne's background, and there are 2 racist incidents. First, the kids watch TV and laugh at Asian people's eyes. Second, they go after my minority group.
Marianne began with Mallory. "She has 7 brothers and sisters," she exclaimed. Caitlin raised her eyebrows. "She must be Catholic," she said.
I'm offended, but to be honest, I think it would be really cool if Mallory was the group's token Catholic. Right now, I don't have any Babysitters Club members to represent me, except for Dawn, and she's about as West Coast as Hardee's hamburgers. Claudia babysits the Lowells, and she feels awkward in front of the mother. She decides the problem is her clothes. As usual, she's dressed like a crazy person. The Lowell kids misbehave for Claudia. They threaten to tell their mom that Claudia is a bad babysitter unless she gives them cookies. Claudia distracts the kids by taking them to a band meeting, but they go back to misbehaving when band is over. Mrs. Lowell calls at the next Babysitters Club meeting, but she asks for somebody besides Claudia. Claudia gets defensive because she has no idea what she did wrong, and all of the girls overanalyze what happened. I think it's pretty obvious that the kids followed through on their threat to tell Mom that Claudia is a bad babysitter, but nobody considers this possibility for some reason. Jessie babysits the Lowells next. Mrs. Lowell is shocked to see her. She quickly says they don't need a sitter after all, and she shuts the door in Jessie's face. Jessie is incredibly confused by this, which I found surprising, considering that she's quick to recognize racism in almost every other book. Continuity. Christy babysits the Lowells and asks the kids about the other sitters. They choke on their food and say outright that Mom doesn't like black people. Christy talks this over with her parents, who agree the Lowells are racist. Christy breaks the bad news to everyone at the next club meeting. There is a serious talk about how racism is awful and illogical, and yes, it's still a problem in many places today. Claudia is angry and hurt. Her instinct is to lash out against the Lowells by discriminating against them, but she doesn't want to sink to their level. Christy has a different idea of how to handle Mrs. Lowell. The next time she calls, Christy talks about her Vietnamese sister, and Logan, the male babysitter. Mrs. Lowell is so scandalized that she hangs up the phone and never calls the BSC again. And, we just resolved the main plot line with 5 chapters left in the book. The rest of the book is about the band, which goes out of its way to be as non-racist as possible. They call themselves All the Children of the World, to highlight the fact that they all come from different countries. They perform songs from Fiddler on the Roof, a play about Russian Jews. Mrs. Lowell disapproves and forces her children to quit the band. Karen makes up silly costumes for the band, and the dress rehearsal goes badly. Then they have their big performance. Claudia sees the Lowell kids in the audience, and she hopes that maybe they'll grow up to be less racist than their mother. The end. Post-book follow-up. The ending to the book is sad and realistic, like the autism and cancer books. It'd be nice to have a happy ending where the Lowells stop being racist, but these girls are middle schoolers. They can't honestly expect to change the mind of the adult villain who hates them. Normally, the babysitters are pretty smart and they recognize problems quickly. In this book, the girls were slow to realize the Lowells were racist. The kids literally pointed at an Asian person, laughed, and said, "Look at their eyes!" That's really blatant racism, but the BSC don't recognize it. I guess the idea is that they're so unused to racism, it has to be super obvious before they know what's going on. Some reviewers complained about that. They wanted the book to talk about subtler forms of racism. Instead, the book only addresses blatant racism, like the kind that occurred during World War II. Considering the target audience, I think this book made the right choice. A more nuanced look at racism would be better served in a book for older readers, like California Diaries 14. This book has an ad for the 1993 Babysitters Club calendar, complete with pictures of the girls as babies. I want to see this calendar now, although I'm sure these are the same baby pictures in the reprint editions. Overall, this book is merely okay. The racism stuff is uncomfortable, and it's supposed to be, but that doesn't make it any easier to read. Since the racist story wrapped up early, most of the book was taken up by the band storyline. I didn't think the story was bad, but I still say this is my least favorite serious Babysitters Club book so far. I give Babysitters Club number 56, Keep Out Claudia, a 4 out of 10.